communication with college coaches is probably the biggest thing that goes wrong in the process. And the reason I say the biggest thing is because it's such, now sure, email communication, sure, taking visits and just seeing the schools or doing your own research online, that is a big piece of the process. But I would argue out there that the biggest piece is communicating with coaches. So we're going to dive into that today. I have a few cool documents that I'm going to show you guys just right now. Questions for coaches. Okay, this is one document that I've been really working long and hard on, and let's just go through it. The big three pillars that we talk about at ForeCollegeGolf all the time are academics, athletics, and the social or more cultural, or you could even say environmental side of the school. Okay, those are the big three ways that we think about college sports and looking at the particular schools that my guys and also my girls are pursuing. Okay, so we have questions from each of these standpoints. And as you can see, just giving an example real quick here, with the athletic standpoint, we're talking about strength of the team, coaching, recruiting, facilities, practice, qualifying, right? Some really, really interesting things here that go into the athletic sphere, if you will. Okay, and then the same thing goes for academic, and the same thing goes for the more social side of the school. And what I've noticed over the years is that a lot of people always go athletic. You know, we're always thinking, how good is this coach? How good is the team? You know, what are the facilities like? And don't get me wrong, you know, I heard a stat just a few weeks ago that if you spend 1 week per year for 4 years in high school, taking a 1 hour lesson from your swing coach, that's about 200, 250 lessons over the course of 4 or 5 years, right? In one semester in college golf, it's likely you're gonna have about 25 to 30 hour practice weeks. You're gonna spend that much time in one semester with your head coach at college. Okay, so it is important to have an understanding of the coach and from the athletic standpoint. But what I'm really trying to get at here is that the main thing that I see people make mistakes with is they do not ask questions about the social environment, and if they're going to be really comfortable and really happy there. And that can go, and we'll get into this in just a minute, but that could go for the surrounding area, that could go for the feel of campus, the type of people at campus, the size of the student body. Those are all those social cues and those social considerations that we're trying to make here with these documents. Okay, so those are the big three. When I talk to my guys and my girls in the ForeCollegeGolf program, we're always breaking it down. Is this an athletic perspective? Is this an academic thing that we're talking about? Or is this more of the social, environmental, or potentially cultural thing that can go into that decision to either attend that school or look elsewhere? Okay, and then the two other categories that I wanted to show you guys here were questions to ask current players. I think speaking with players on the team, whether it's a senior, someone that's been there for 3 or 4 years and very experienced, or whether it's a freshman, someone that just came into the school and is just getting a taste of what it is to be on that team. I think both are very, very important to get perspectives from. So I have my players reach out to current players all the time and ask questions. The fifth and final column here is questions that coaches will ask you. So obviously we need to be prepared to ask questions because we're going to be gathering information, especially over the phone. Okay, but we also need to be prepared for questions that coaches are going to ask us, right? If we're not prepared to answer questions like, what is your practice schedule like? Or what kind of goals have you set for yourself before college? Then we're going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball. So when we talk about athletics in college sports, we think about the athletic department, right? All the basketball team, the football team, the women's lacrosse team, the soccer team, right? We're not just talking about the golf team, okay? So some things that really come to mind early on for me are coaches, budgets. How do they travel? Are they traveling on a private jet? Are they traveling on a bus? Or Perhaps are they accountable for their own travel at the lower level, right? Those are some main things I start to think about. But let's get into the nitty gritty. Let's get into some questions that probably are more relevant for those of you listening out there. Okay, so let's just go through these sections here real quick. So strength and competitiveness of the team. Why is that important? I think that's incredibly important because I've seen guys time and time again make mistakes of reaching too high too soon and thinking that they can impress a coach at a school when they have no leverage, they have no their school's interested, and this school is the absolute, biggest, best school on their list. Okay, at ForeCollegeGolf, we actually take the opposite approach and we start from the bottom. We try to build leverage, get some leverage under our belt, if you will, and then reach out to those higher level schools. Okay, so when it comes to the competitiveness of the team, we're always trying to make sure there's a healthy balance between the coach believing you can play for him, you believing that you can really go in and play right away, and then making sure that you fit in well with that team, with the players on the team, and you feel like you can actually become a better player as you're progressing through the years in college. Okay, so questions like, Coach, where do you think I will fit on the team? Coach, will I play number one right away, or will I have to sit out in order to gain playing time my freshman year? Okay, these are all great questions, and I'm just going to flip it off of that real quick so I can speak directly to you guys. Okay, what about asking about the skill level of players? I think that's a really important question. Coach, what is the skill level of your players on the team? Right, this would be a very basic way to approach that. Coach, what kind of scoring averages are you looking for junior golfers like myself? All great questions. Okay. All right, let's go into coaching. So if we're looking at an individual, or in this case, so let's talk about the level of coaching. In Division I, it's very common, especially at the highest level, to have a director of golf, a head coach, and an assistant coach. And some of those teams even have volunteer assistants, psychologists, personal trainers, nutritionists. There's all kinds of people, especially within the university, involved at the top level. Once you get down into Division II, you're typically only working with a head coach, maybe an assistant coach if they're a top-notch team, potentially a volunteer assistant, or maybe even a grad assistant. So a player that may have played the last 4 years and wants to go to graduate school. A lot of coaches in Division II take them on as grad assistants. So we're just kind of defining who is coach here. And in the process, I am totally fine. I think it's totally acceptable to start from the bottom, maybe an assistant coach, maybe a grad assistant, and work your way up the ladder. Okay. Now, if you're late in the process, now we always work on a timeline here at ForeCollegeGolf. So if you are behind in the process or late in the process, it's extremely important that you get straight to the top. But if you're starting at the right time and if you're preparing the right way, I think it really does make sense to reach out to an assistant coach perhaps before it does to get into the head coach. One, it's good practice. Two, I think you can be more casual and you can ask more open-ended questions about the university and the program. And typically that's just the way it works, right? It's almost like a doorkeeper in a way. A lot of these high academic and high athletic colleges, what they do is coach basically says, okay, assistant coach, your duties are to find 50 recruits a year that fit our recruiting mold. It might be scoring average under 74, club head speed over 110, and a very incredible athletic prospect in the gym. That might be something a particular coach is looking for, right? And then with that, the assistant coach goes and looks at the rankings. He looks at, he in the past, not right now in Division I, but in Division II, Division III, and pre-Corona, coaches would go out on the road and recruit. They love recruiting at AJGAs, USGAs. You don't see quite as many coaches at state events or more regional events like the Hurricane Tour, but they're there. And I think more than anything, while I'm on this topic, I want to say this. If you have an upcoming tournament schedule and you're going and traveling near a college, it's really important that you find which schools are around where you're playing especially if they're good fits for you, and email them to let them know that you'll be nearby. That's a great opportunity for one, you to potentially go and see campus, and two, the coach to come and watch and evaluate you on the golf course. So let's go through coaching. So here's some great questions that I think you guys could really benefit from when it comes to looking at coaches. What is your greatest strength as a coach? Really relevant question there, right? What are your main roles as the leader of this program? What are your goals as a coach? What vision do you have for the team in the upcoming year? What is your favorite part of coaching? Or ask them what's their least favorite part. I think that's a really good one too. And then ask them how they work with players in practice. I think that's a really important thing because like we said, we're going to be spending so much time with the coach. A lot of that's going to be in practice. So we really want to ask them how practice is set up. So let's go into practice. Let's talk about that. You could ask a coach, Coach, could you tell me what a typical week of practice looks like? What would a typical daily schedule look like for a student athlete on this team? Maybe we ask, Coach, what is one thing that's made your players successful in the past? What about unsuccessful, right? Maybe what have they done wrong? And then I think this is a really just down to earth question. How are practices structured, right? I think that's a really, really good one, okay? All right, so that's pretty much it. I'm just gonna give you guys the cliff notes for each of the columns, like I said, academic, athletic, and social. And then as we go through here, we're gonna talk about how to use these in emails, in phone calls, or perhaps on an unofficial visit. Let's go into academic. So when we think academic, we think about the majors offered on the team. We think about how challenging the school is from an academic standpoint, right? Is school gonna get in the way of golf? Or is golf gonna get in the way of school? Right? I think that's a big important thing to figure out. How many credits do most team members take each semester? Right? That's probably something you would ask on a visit, but not perhaps on a first email to a coach. And then I think just asking about the track record of players after graduation. Are they going on and trying to turn professional? Are they going and working as doctors, lawyers on Wall Street? Where are they going? And how successful have they been? Okay, really, really important things. All right, let's talk about advisors and support systems, right? Because when we're thinking academic here, in a lot of cases, and many of you might not know this already, it's very likely that you're going to have an academic support service, whether it's an advisor, a counselor, a tutor, even just group study hall sometimes. These are really good support systems that are available to many student athletes. So it's really important to ask about this. But once we get a coach on the phone, I think this is a great academic question to ask is, Coach, what type of academic support services are available to student athletes on the men's golf team, right? We went pretty specific there. You could keep it much shorter, much more discreet than that. But I think asking coaches, if I run into trouble here, especially if it's a high academic institution, it's really important to understand I do have someone that can help me. I will have someone that will have my back. And I won't just be on an island on my own asking for help, okay? All right, so that's a great initial chat with the academic side. Now let's go into the social scene, okay? Now, when I say social, some people think party, some people think college campus. We're talking about everything in between, okay? So we're not necessarily talking about how big of a party school is this school. We're not also talking about how beautiful is this campus, how often do they plant flowers on the drive in. We're talking about everything in between, okay? So let's talk about the campus and environment first, and a couple of questions that might make sense to ask coaches based on that. Coach, based on your experience and based on your opinion, what's the best thing about the campus culture at so-and-so university, right? Coach, what do you enjoy most about University of Florida? Or, Coach, what does James Madison University pride itself on? I think priding itself on is something that's really impactful. Every school has a mantra, and not to say that every coach is along with that mantra with the school, but many times, like I went to James Madison. It's one of the happiest, most vibrant campuses, I think, in the nation. And we pride ourselves on, and this is kind of silly, and I think a coach would have a better explanation, a better word for it. But JMU really prides itself on holding doors open for people, being a really happy, welcoming, and just cordial campus. And that's really important. It was, at least for me, seeing that on my visit, being a part of that. And that was one of the things that ultimately I think helped me make my decision to play college golf at James Madison. Okay, maybe asking, Coach, is there any must-see places on campus? That's a great question for an email, especially right now if you're traveling without meeting coaches on campus, right? So if you're, or potentially you're on the phone with a coach, right? We're in a dead period until May 31st. If you say, Coach, I would love to come see campus, would it make sense for me and my parents to come by while we're in the city? I'm playing the Scott Robertson Memorial down the road. Where's a must-see place on campus? And he might say, well, it might make a lot of sense for you to do a campus tour. Might make sense for you to go see the Athletic Performance Center and those buildings. Might make sense for you to go see the dorms. Who knows? Could be anything in between, but it's a great question to start with. Okay. And if anyone's not listening, please listen now, because I think this is probably the most important thing I'll say all webinar. And I just want to set the record straight and want to give you guys a better understanding of how I believe this communication process should work. When we're sending emails, the idea is to provide information to the coaches so they can get to know us better, right? When we're typing emails, that's typically the beginning of the process. It's typically when coaches don't know us yet, and we're sending things like resumes, swing videos, personal interviews, perhaps. I've done that with quite a few clients. Potentially writing about how your practice is going. What are you working on technically in your golf swing? How are you approaching the upcoming tournament season? All great things that I think were really impactful to put in emails, okay? So remember that emails are for information providing, and when we get on the phone, it's for information gathering, okay? And the reason I say this is because I've had time and time again, young men and young women hop on the phone and feel the need to sell themselves, okay? And we'll get into this in just a minute, I promise. We're gonna get into the upfront contract, and I'm gonna help you really approach the conversations to look more mature, more intentional, and not feel the need to sell yourself. Okay, so just a quick reminder, if we are sending emails, let's focus on providing information, typing a lot of detail, making sure it makes sense, it's easily understood, and coaches can decipher it pretty quickly. Coaches don't have a lot of time, especially right now in the middle of the spring season, getting ready for conference championship, regional championships, and national championships, right? They're extremely busy right now. So when you're providing information, making sure over email, it's very easy to read, very easy to decipher, and it's worthwhile. If you just tell a coach, well, I shot 78, 74, I played good, the course was hard, it was windy, that's not that much information, right? Tell them how you felt, tell them what you thought of the golf course, help them understand how you evaluate your performance, and also tell them what you think you could do better next time. Okay, so go into deep detail, okay? And then when we get on the phone, that's when these questions become really useful, okay? When we can ask questions in order to gather the information. All right, hope that's starting to make sense for everybody. All right, and just quickly, I'm gonna share the screen again, and we're gonna go through questions to ask current players and questions to expect from college coaches. So let's actually go that in reverse order. And we're first gonna talk about questions that you can expect from college coaches. Okay, these could be over email, over the phone, but most importantly, I think they ask these when you're on campus on your initial visit. Okay. And right now in coronavirus times, a lot of these questions, unfortunately, are having to be asked over the phone or over FaceTime, over something like this, Zoom, or even WhatsApp. Coaches are using a lot of different mediums to connect with their prospective student athletes right now. All right, so questions to expect from college coaches. Young man, what are you looking for in your college experience? What other colleges are you considering? Have you received any offers? What sort of scholarship offer are you looking for? What is your intended major? What do you intend to study? What are your long-term goals? Do you want to play professionally? Really interesting questions. So guys, if you have any questions about these, let's discuss it. I'm going to open it up for conversation here once we get through the upfront contract. But these are really good questions, I think, to plan out, discuss them with a friend, discuss them with mom and dad. Be ready for these questions. And the more you discuss these questions, especially this first one here, I think the more college ready you will be to jump on an opportunity when you see it, right? If you know what you're looking for in your college experience and you put the boots on the ground and you actually visit a few college campuses, it's going to be a lot easier to understand and see when you find that right school, you'll know it's the right one. Okay. All right, and then questions to ask current players. So this is really important. I think, coaches won't always, now the good ones will, but not every coach in the country will show you the dumpster in the back alley, right? A lot of them are showing you the bells and whistles in the front of the school. Okay, so I'm not saying coaches are trying to deceive us, but what I am saying, if a coach really wants you as a recruit and he thinks he might lose you to another university, he's not going to show you everything, right? They're going to show you the bells and whistles and try to really explain to you that this school could be a perfect fit, not a so-so fit. So that's when I think it's really impactful, really important to get in and ask current players. And I tell my guys, talk to freshmen and also talk to seniors, right? Because the seniors have experience. They've been with the coach for a long, long time. They know how coaches recruit. They know how coaches set up practice. They know those little intricacies that are important. And then freshmen, I think, are really cool to talk to because they're just getting their beaks wet, right? They're just starting to dip a toe into the water. And, the adjustment process in college is one of the toughest things that I think I've ever had to experience in life. And a lot of people, go into, you're leaving home, you're leaving your family, and you're adjusting to a new environment. And that's exactly what freshmen are going through. So when you're talking to current players, how was the adjustment process? Did you feel at home right away at this university? And if so, why? That question's not in front of our face here tonight, but that's a great one I think we could use. Okay. And as you can see, I have a lot of questions that indirectly get you answers that you might not want to ask a coach right off the bat. What does a typical Friday night look like? Okay, if you ask that to a freshman or a senior on the team, I think they're going to be able to give you a pretty straight answer pretty quickly. Oh, the guys just hang out at the house, or we go to these 4 frat parties and then we go to the bars, and you'll get a pretty quick understanding of what the culture's like on that team. Okay. Time, purpose, coach's agenda or expectations, player's agenda and expectations, and then the 5th is the next step. Okay, take the next step. We're talking about the upfront contract now. Okay, and ideally this is something that we're using in emails, on phone calls, on visits. And if it's on a phone call or on a visit, this is something that needs to be down packed right at the beginning. Okay, if it's an email, you're just going through, if we are setting up a call from an email, how much time do we need? What's the purpose? What are the agendas for coach? What are the agendas for me? What are the next steps once we move on from here? Okay, so let's explain that. I know there's a lot of you out there probably scratching your head, and I hope we have some visual learners that might be reading the screen, but let's talk about time. That is the amount of time needed for the phone call. And I'm just gonna, okay, there we go. All right, so time, it's the amount of time needed for the phone call, the meeting, or the visit on that particular day. Okay, so this is something that we want to discuss early on, and we could give an example real quickly. Hello, coach, this is Mike Smith. I'm a 2022 recruit from Jacksonville, Florida. How are you today? I'm great, Mike. How are you? I'm doing really well, coach. Is now a bad time? So we ask, is now a bad time? Because it's human nature to say no much faster than saying yes. If we all said yes to everything, we would be crashing cars, jumping off bridges, doing crazy things, right? So it's really impactful to ask, coach, is now a bad time? So back into role play here real quick. No, Mike, not a bad time at all. Great, coach. Would it be okay if we talk for about 10 or 15 minutes? Boom. What did we do right there? We discussed the amount of time. Okay, so if we went back into role play, yeah, Mike, that should work. I have about 15 minutes before I have to jump on the phone, and then I have to go to practice after that. What's up? Okay, so you can see right off the bat how that starts the conversation just by addressing time. All right, right after we address time, what we want to do is address purpose. Now, the purpose is not what you're thinking. Many people think the purpose is you have to spill the beans and tell the coach exactly why you're calling and every last detail of what you want to talk about that given phone call. That is not the case. I want it to be short, sweet, and simple. So let me give an example. Coach, I'm calling today to introduce myself and learn a little bit more about your golf program. Okay, short, sweet, and simple, right? That's a very clear purpose. I think when we're talking about setting up visits, we want to have a very clear purpose. We want to know why we're actually walking around campus today. Okay, and it's very important that these things are understood before that actually happens. Okay, so let's go to step 3, the coach's agenda. I always say this in terms of, meeting with my guys, my athletes, and my young women. We always want to be catering to college coaches first. We want to make it easy on them. We want to put them first. We want to look mature and intentional, and this is a great way to do it. Okay, so how are we doing this? We're asking about their agenda, and we're trying to, like I said, cater to the coach. Okay, so we want to put those coaches' concerns, their questions, and their agenda before ours at all times. Okay, so let's go through a quick role play for a coach's agenda. So I might say, as the player, coach, when you speak to recruits over the phone for the first time, what do you typically see and hear from them? Or, coach, what would you like to talk about today? Simple as that. Okay, cater to them. Ask them what they want to hear from you. Okay, step 4, your agenda, the player's agenda. Okay, these are specific details that you've maybe researched, discussed with someone like myself or your parents, and you have a reason to call. Okay, this is your ammunition, if you will. Once you've discussed the coach's agenda, we need to highlight a few talking points that we're still really curious about and bring them to light. All right, so let's role play through that real quick. Coach, would it also be okay if I asked you some questions about how you run your program, the academic makeup of Georgia University, and the competitiveness of your golf program? Sure, Mike, no problem. That's a great way to set it up your agenda and set your expectations for that phone call. Okay, and then the general conversation can begin. So that might all happen in the first 1 minute or 2 minutes of a phone call. And it's a great intentional way to set things up. Okay, and we're not going to forget about the next step. Let's talk about this. So the most important piece of this is having a clear future. Why? Because if we don't have a clear future, it sounds like this. Mike, I really have to go. I'm sorry. We talked for about 25 minutes today. I had a great conversation, but I'll talk to you soon. Okay, coach, sounds great. Click. There's no clear future. There's no idea of when you're going to connect again. And that really is how relationships go to die, if you will. I hate to be cynic or like say it like that, but it's very true that if you don't set a next step, sometimes there's never a communication from that point on. Okay, so let's go through that. So let's say you're ending the phone call, the conversation's coming to a close, you've kept an eye on the time, and let's say you asked for 20 minutes and we're coming up on the 18th minute, and the conversation's kind of coming down and dwindling down to a close. Coach, and I'm the player here in the role play. Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me over the phone today. Not a problem, Mike. I really enjoyed our conversation as well. Coach, do you think it would make sense for us to speak again in the near future? That's the important question, okay? So that's one of the easiest ones is, Coach, do you think it would make sense to speak again? Here's another one that I think you should write down. Coach, what's our next step from here? Where do you think we should go? Coach, in terms of continuing our communication, what would be best? Right, great questions to ask Coach. So I think in that moment, you're really just trying to allow the coach to speak and keeping your fingers crossed. If we're quiet and we listen well during that moment as we're asking, Coach, do you think it would make sense to speak again in the near future? We're going to get a lot of feedback in that moment. If they're adamant about speaking again next week, that means they're interested. If they say, well, keep me updated, send me your results, and we'll touch base sometime in the summer, sometime in the future, right? Then we're kind of saying, well, they might not be that interested. And if they say, Mike, I don't think you're a great fit, you might not be the perfect fit for our program, I think you should look elsewhere. Or perhaps, Mike, unfortunately, we're full for the 2022 class, but I wish you the best of luck on the recruiting trail, and let me know if you need anything else from us. So it's a great moment that either can give you the no that you need to move on and look at other schools, or the confidence, the feedback that you're yearning for to understand if that school's interested in you or not.